So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barry Hillier. I'm CEO and your host for today. Wanted to start this webinar off by saying that at Equo, we prioritize diversity, equality, inclusion, and mutual respect. The Equo platform helps small businesses, particularly CPG founders, and what we've learned is most founders actually come from the visible majority. And what that means is if you take a look at all of the founders that are out there, they tend to be Indigenous, Black, persons with disabilities, persons of color, persons over 60, immigrant, and LGBTQ plus. So for us at Equal, we are really dedicated to supporting all founders and in particular ensuring that the unique journeys facing each founder are recognized. And Equal is dedicated to fostering the growth and success of consumer packaged goods entrepreneurs. We provide the essential tools, unwavering support, and vital connections to turn entrepreneurial dreams into reality. For us, CPG stands for community, passion, and growth. And we're committed to guiding entrepreneurs through every step of their journey. We want to also acknowledge that our work occurs on the inherent and treaty lands of various Indigenous cultures across Canada. So much of our team, including myself, resides in the Dish with One Spoon Treaty Territory in Southern Ontario. Toronto, specifically where I live, is the traditional land of the Mississauga, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat peoples. Now, being able to acknowledge the land and the history of the peoples who lived on the land should be something that is much more personal. So, what I'm going to also say is that I live near the Humber River, and that holds a rich historical significance for the Indigenous peoples dating back over 10,000 years. This area held a village with over 1,000 people known as Teyeyegon, and it was a vital trade route and settlement for the Haudenosaunee community, and it also basically helped settle Toronto. So land acknowledgements should be meaningful and rooted in truth. So I recognize that my family lives on land that's been home to Indigenous populations for millennia and acknowledge the forced displacement and loss of resources experienced by Indigenous peoples. This truth is essential for meaningful reconciliation, and part of what I'm doing is working to continually educate myself as well as work with Indigenous peoples, buy from Indigenous companies, and recognize the rich cultural heritage of these communities and how I can start to learn and take part as a non-Indigenous person. So I'd also now like to move on and introduce Shai Nolman from Montero and Martin Wang from Tidal Commerce. I'm really looking forward to today because what we're going to be talking about is basically e-commerce strategies. And before we get started, I'd like Martin and I'd like Shai, if you just take a moment, introduce yourself and also your companies, because both companies I think are fantastic and really companies that more businesses should be aware of. So Martin, let's start with you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for the introduction. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Martin Wang, and I lead the operations consulting practice here at Tidal Commerce. So what we do at Tidal Commerce is really we're a full end-to-end digital and e-commerce consultancy. So we work with a lot of merchants, specifically on Shopify, but also some other platforms as well to help them optimize their store, improve the performance of their websites, enhance the customer experience, and kind of just offer that broader strategy in terms of how do you target your customers, like where do you go with your product. We partner with our clients really, from a strategic perspective to help them think about what's the next steps to grow their business. And my role specifically on the team is that I lead a team of consultants who have either technical backgrounds or that growth marketing background. So it's really a combination of both to really help our clients to think about the next steps and find the most effective and efficient way to execute on those ideas.
That's great. Thank you, Martin. And Shai, if you can talk about yourself and Montero, and how you came about, because I find your story and how you started the company really fascinating.
Thank you. Barry, it was a wonderful introduction. I really appreciate being invited to join. Martin, great to see you again. Wonderful reconnecting. So my background is kind of very typically business studenty type of thing. I've done consulting, banking, venture capital, private equity. I like to joke that there's the MBA Pokemon. I kind of caught them all. And really a number of years ago, my an MBA classmate of mine from Ivy and I got together and started playing around with various business models, and we did some VC and PE off the side of our desks. A bunch of our projects were successful, a bunch of them were dismal failures. But when COVID kind of started, we had the insight that e-commerce was really going to be a thing. And it's going to be serve as a much meaningful accelerator to the space. And so we caught on a trend of raising capital to acquire Amazon stores, a business model that had something like $10 billion in debt and equity capacity raised to acquire third-party sellers, which comprise, if Amazon is this massive $700 billion gross merchandise value GMV beast, what people don't recognize is that about 60% of that, just under 500 billion, is third-party sellers. And so there's tens and thousands of these sellers, and there's been a business model meant to acquire them. And so we raised a little bit of capital and acquired some stores, and one of our stores ended up being a wonderful success that we're very grateful for. We are the #1 seller of glass nail files on Amazon. It's a weird flex for a former Bay Street guy to be running a beauty company, but we make these little guys under the Bonafide Beauty brand. They're made out of Czech glass, Bohemian glass. They're better than metal, more sustainable than emery, and they're made in the glassworks of the Czech Republic. And so over the past couple of years, we've grown this business, increasing it by twofold. We've managed to improve margins by 10% in an inflationary environment through careful attention to operations and good financial reporting. And within that context, though, the market for Amazon acquisitions has changed meaningfully as there has been a reversion to mean, and many of the companies that became acquirers either went out of business because the assets started underperforming on the natural reversion to mean. We all know that there's a natural business physics to these things. So when we looked at ourselves and said, what are we gonna make our future on? What are we really good at? And we became really good at selling on Amazon, both in the store operations and the performance marketing side. And we thought, okay, well, we have this wonderful brand. We're not going to acquire anymore. Why don't we help emerging and established brands build their Amazon channel? And so we've worked with a number of brands and have some wonderful success stories of how we took an established brand, people who are really good at product, really good at branding, and helping them execute against this challenging and often inhospitable channel in a way that building in-house capacity was just not feasible for their particular business model. And so we're happy to partner with those guys. And that's what we do. We help growing and established brands build their Amazon channel, soon Walmart channel, and we're ultimately we're a marketplace specialist.
I really find this fascinating from the standpoint of I know for us, we're taking a look at Amazon. It is, to your point, a massive, massive channel. But I've heard from so many people that all they've done is lose money on it. So I wanna maybe start out, if you can maybe just explain top line, what are some of the dynamics that make Amazon unique, and what are the pros and cons or the do's and don'ts? And then Martin, I'm going to turn to you because you mentioned ahead of time that you actually also have your own Amazon channel. So I'd love to then pivot to you and ask you what what have you discovered about using that? So maybe Shai, if you want to lead that off.
Sure. It's a very involved question, so I'm going to try to keep it fairly brief. Amazon is massive, and its strength is really the fact that it is massive. The Amazon attracts over 2 billion customers monthly in terms of traffic, all with purchase intent. And so when you look at potentially other channels, social, etc., the intent on Facebook or on Instagram or on TikTok may not be commerce. And on Amazon, it's commerce first. So these are people who are looking for things to buy. And Amazon is really good at catering to those people and really has a strong understanding of their particular buying patterns, because they have this amazing hyper precise data on every customer, one that unfortunately they don't share with their merchants, that people like Martin and I probably find quite frustrating, but they know very well as to how to guide customers to the things that they're looking for. Amazon has also built the biggest logistics network globally, and have really perfected things like same day delivery, next day delivery, which customers really are expecting at this stage. That may be difficult when you're working with traditional 3PLs, or there's some great innovations that have been made in that space as well. And it's really a comprehensive place to list your product. And one of the things that we're finding that beyond simply listing the product and generating the capital that comes from that, and we'll talk about unit economics in more depth, I think, but the idea that in 2024, if you're a consumer products company, consumers have been so conditioned that products are meant to be available on Amazon that most CPG companies find they have to list at least some of their assortment on Amazon as a form of legitimacy. And having those Amazon sales is actually a way of providing a proof point to other channels that they're growing and they're well established and they have the product market fit. Amazon, by virtue of its ruthlessness, also provides evidence of that product market fit in the form of customer ratings or reviews. It's really hard to have a 4.5 rating. By virtue of math, you need 9 5-star ratings and 1 1-star ratings to have a 4.5. So really any flaws in your product are laid bare for the market. And so it's a really good, if not brutal, way of getting market feedback. Now, Amazon is also an absolutely ruthless marketplace in the sense that it is an extreme meritocracy. It's pay to play. It's competitively dense. Gone are the days when you can list something and have it be profitable. And so it requires very careful execution and hard work. Amazon is a government, for lack of a better words, in the size of its bureaucracy. I mean, $700 billion in GMV puts it at the size of Taiwan's economy. That's a crazy amount to think about. And because it's very bureaucratic, you have to follow the rules. Oftentimes, you're working with AI as opposed to people, which causes a lot of frustration. And the rules are ever changing. And so very careful, diligent execution is important to be able to succeed in the marketplace. I'll make 2 more points and then hopefully Martin can take over so that I'm not monopolizing the airspace. But one is that it is pay to play. Amazon advertising is important for new brands launching and existing brands maintaining. So some of your revenue will go towards that. I'm sure we'll talk about that in greater detail as well. And then finally is the dynamic within Amazon where your product has to be quite good. Because what I've mentioned in terms of your ratings and reviews, you can't launch something that is partially baked because the algorithm will brutalize you for it. And one of those elements is pricing. Amazon, uncompetitively, arguably, has to be the lowest price. And so you need for Amazon to be the lowest price of any channel you sell, or the algorithm will penalize you again. And so that makes for some pretty challenging unit economics.
Martin, why don't you jump in? What have your experiences been from Amazon, and what are the pros and cons that you've witnessed personally?
Yeah, for sure. So definitely something that I neglected to mention in my introduction, and thank you, Barry, for bringing it up, is that I also have my own personal Amazon brand. It's actually a baby care brand. So our main products include bassinets, playpans, strollers, which are larger ticket items that's different from the nature of CPG. So what I found in operating that brand is that the cost of acquisition on Amazon is much lower compared to my own site, which is also on Shopify. And I think Shai can speak to this as well. But Amazon being commerce first is already, like Shai said, driving so much traffic of people who are like have the intention of wanting to buy coming onto the site, right? So that's part of the result why cost of acquisition is lower. For CPG brands specifically, I think you should look into exploring both platforms. The advantage of Shopify would be really that subscription model, or just really building up that brand and building up customer loyalty, so that if you look at the average customer lifetime value compared to the initial cost of acquisition, it doesn't seem like that much. But for larger ticket items, such as the brand that I ran, I found that Amazon, just on a unit economic basis, cost of acquisition is lower. It's just naturally driving more traffic to the site. So if it doesn't really have repeat purchase, then Amazon definitely makes sense from a cost effectiveness perspective.
So I'm going to actually direct this question at both of you. I think one of the things that often will happen is people will focus on one thing where founders have to focus on many. And so what I mean by that is, let's say that you're opening up your Shopify. You also are trying to figure out, how do you figure wholesaling? How do you understand your integrations with Shopify and Amazon into your QuickBooks, et cetera? Martin, starting with you, how should founders think about, because I know for us at Cabanish, we were on a Wix site. Equo is currently on a Wix site, and Wix is perfect for Equo. We found it had a lot of shortcomings from an e-commerce standpoint. It didn't have the depth in the back end. So we're actually right now migrating and switching over to Shopify. So how do you tell your clients, and how should founders think about managing all these integrations so that they don't fall short later when they decide to go into an Amazon, when they're trying to figure out their inventory management, their wholesaling, their accounting integrations, et cetera?
Yeah, I would say that my experience is typically that you should start out with the most scalable platform. So this is the latest technology with the most scalability. So what Shopify has an advantage on is, for instance, it has over 7,000 apps in its app store. So for those that don't know, this is an app store that's similar to an Apple store, or like an Android store, where you can literally, with a click of a button, install a feature onto your website. On Wix, on the other hand, there's only, I think, around 300 to 400 apps. So just by comparing those numbers, you can see, one has more ability to scale on an e-commerce end. So going back to your question, Barry, which is on, how do founders kind of decide on which platforms to go for, and how do they really optimize their time spent? I think it's about, from the get-go, selecting something that has the potential to grow with you, which is something like a Shopify or Ecommerce, the core e-commerce platforms that has a lot of those, like long-term capabilities built in. And on top of it, it's really just like, continue to monitor the analytics on your stores, talking to your customers, understanding what are their most pressing pain points to decide on which direction you want to go in next. There's no, one size fits all. It's really, it depends on your customers. It depends on your brand. It depends on your overall kind of growth strategy. So it's mainly about getting to know more about your business, your customers, and then deciding on what the next steps are.
That's great. Shai, how do you recommend founders review and understand all of these different platforms and how they fit together?
So I think Martin's answer was fairly comprehensive. Maybe I'll put my CFO hat on and provide kind of more of a something that comes from more of a financial lens. We are very firm believers in unit economics, and the question fundamentally is, what can allow you to sustain your business? Where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? If you have a product that is very experiential and needs to be touched, then retail, wholesale is potentially the right thing for you, because it will allow you to position it in a way that customers will experience it with a low return rate, where you can price it accordingly, that allows that channel to be more fruitful. And then once you've built up brand cachet, then you can move to Shopify and then Amazon, etc. If your product is not necessarily experiential, you're quite good at creating a social following, it's really community based, and you can advertise on Meta or on Google or on Instagram and kind of build a fan base, like brand cachet online, then that's a wonderful channel for you too. And I would recommend Shopify. Despite us being Amazon experts, I'm reticent to recommend Amazon as a first channel. Mostly because a few reasons. First of all, uh, without product market fit being proven, there's more likely that your product needs to undergo some incremental refinements before you can pull those 4.5-star ratings that are so important to succeed. Second of all, Amazon really requires you to feed the beast in terms of inventory. So that means production capacity and supply chain reliability, because once things start going, you need to continuously be providing inventory into Amazon, or you'll be penalized for low inventory or insufficient inventory. And that requires scale in other channels so that you can have some of that production capacity. And lastly, because growing the Amazon channel requires a war chest. You have to market your way up, and you have to price below where you probably want to be priced. And so those other channels are more forgiving when you're setting a baseline price, and on Amazon, they're less so. So really what we recommend is for brands to have some level of traction, some level of cachet, and some level of resource and customer proof point before moving on to Amazon. But ultimately, I think it depends on your product, and I think people have done brilliantly in retail and wholesale, and people have done brilliantly on Shopify, and people have done brilliantly on Amazon. And so bang for buck is how I would take a look at it, both in terms of treasure and in terms of time and effort and learning curve.
I really appreciate those insights, Martin. I'm going to jump to you and then back over to Shai to continue. How then should founders consider, in terms of what are the key prioritizations to have a solid start using Shopify? How should they scale? And then at what point, once all of this is happening, should other channels like Amazon be considered? And that's what we'll jump back over to you there, Shai.
Yeah, I think Shai brought up a good point, which is at the end of the day, Amazon and Shopify or whatever other channel you're on are just channels. They're tools to help you market and sell a great product. Without that product market fit in the first place, it would be very hard and very expensive to convert customers on either platforms, really. So something that I really found a lot of success early on is going to in-person events or trade shows. So these are consumer-facing trade shows where we can showcase our products to our customers, speak to people, have them try out, test out the products, and really collect a lot of that feedback. I think to answer your question, Barry, a lot of the time spent by the entrepreneur in the early days should be on perfecting that product and finding the product market fit. And if it doesn't work, understanding why didn't it work, and if we should pivot, whether it's changing certain features or going into a completely different product category. So yeah, I think kind of going back to the point of talking to your customers and collecting feedback, that's going to be very crucial for you to understand what are the next steps before you scale up the marketing efforts on either Amazon or Shopify.
Well, and once they get ready to go into Shopify, and going back to the events, I know we had made a bit of a mistake in a previous company that I was involved with from a POS standpoint. So we actually had a different POS system, and we had Shopify, and we ended up, it not only caused accounting issues, we were kind of getting double banged at times in terms of certain fees. So can you maybe walk us through how should the Shopify setup be considered? Because even though it's an e-commerce site, that POS system for trade shows, for pop-up booths, for farmers markets, what is a pretty critical piece of that system.
Absolutely. So one of the advantages of Shopify is that it has a really amazing POS system. So the nice thing about it is that like it's nice and small. You can bring it anywhere you go, such as a trade show. And the other thing is it links naturally to all of your backend, the same management systems that you use for your e-commerce stores. So all of the inventory is updated real time for both offline and online. All of your customer data is stored in the same place. So I think just from the perspective of understanding your customers and having multiple data points for online and offline, having a POS system that naturally integrates to your online store is critical in understanding, what are the purchase histories of your customer, what are their preferences in terms of shipment, how has your salespeople interacted with them offline. Like all of that data will be stored in one place. And like you said, Barry, to avoid duplicated charges in, having an online and offline system, it's really just combined into one. So from a cost effectiveness perspective, it also makes sense.
And when people are getting set up, what are key apps and considerations and integrations that you think every founder needs to consider?
I think there's a lot. I think that from a backend perspective, so backend meaning these are the tools that enable you to make better decisions that customers don't necessarily see. The important things are, I would say, 3PL integration. So if you don't have your warehouse and you rely on a third party, such as a ShipBob or a ShipMonk of the world to send out your products, then it's really important to make sure that the 3PL's warehouse management system is linked with your e-commerce store, so that you don't have to, spend time on manually entering each purchase that goes through. It just automatically flows through, and your 3PL partner knows when to fulfill the product. The other thing that I think is important is, again, going to the analytics. I think that Google Analytics or some other, comprehensive analytics platform would really provide a lot of value, especially for you to understand where to optimize your store. So platforms like Shopify or Wix or GoDaddy, they offer analytics specifically within the store, which means that you can understand what customers have bought, or at which point on within your website did customers lose interest. So it's good for analytics on the store itself. However, it doesn't really have that awareness side of the data, like whether your customers are coming in from social media or Google search. Like these are critical data points for you to determine how do you spend your marketing dollars, right? So I would suggest that you spend some time on ensuring that your Google Analytics is correctly connected to your Shopify stores or other platforms, and just ensuring that data is accurate, so that you can, like monitor those data ongoingly and find out what exactly to improve. From a front-end perspective, I think Shopify has a wonderful ecosystem in terms of kind of plug-and-play features that you add onto your website. So something that we found a lot of success with our CPG clients specifically is the subscription apps. So to name a few, these are apps like Yapo or Rebuy, right? That kind of help you facilitate the ongoing transactions within your website. So if your product has a lot of repeat purchase built into it, such as coffee or other products that might be used on a recurrent basis, we strongly suggest merchants to set those up in the early days, just so you can have those repeat purchases come in and enhance the customer loyalty on the website.
That's great. One of the things on a 3PL standpoint, and Shai, I'm going to ask you, fulfillment by Amazon. I've heard all sorts of things. Can you maybe explain what it is, and at what point do you manage your own fulfillment, and at what point should you have Amazon do that?
That is a question that is the equal parts of art and science. So maybe as a recap, there are three broad business models that exist on Amazon. You can work on Vendor Central for bigger brands where you treat Amazon as a wholesale customer. They buy your inventory, they price it, they promote it to some degree, they manage it, but really it's like a wholesale customer. You don't have a ton of control. Second is fulfilled by merchant, on which I'm pretty sure that Martin is even a bigger expert than I am, because products that are larger, products that have higher, lower value to weight ratio, and take up a lot of inventory space within Amazon, typically work well with fulfilled by merchant because the transaction volumes are low. You sell fewer of them. Or there's FBA, which is kind of what we're used to. It's something that we get with our Prime subscriptions, which is one-click buy, see it today, see it tomorrow. And that's more of the model that we're used to. So those are kind of the three models. I'll talk about FBM, fulfilled by merchant, and fulfilled by Amazon primarily. I'll start with fulfilled by Amazon. So fulfilled by Amazon is effectively has you moving your inventory into Amazon's warehouses. They then become distributed throughout Amazon's fulfillment network, which is vast, and they become available to customers who purchase the product. There are numerous advantages to this. First of all, customers get it today, they get it tomorrow, they get it with a very reasonable time frame. Many customers, as I've mentioned, are conditioned to want their products today, even if they may not necessarily need them today. In my mind, I have a USB cable that I don't really need until tomorrow, but I hope that it comes today because that's how I've been trained to think about these things. Also, if within the FBA system, the algorithm obviously prioritizes products that are FBA, unfairly, uncompetitively, but that's how they do it, because Amazon makes more money. Arguably between 25 and 35% of the revenue goes towards Amazon's inventory management services and account management services in some way, which brings me to one of the drawbacks and kind of the transition to fulfilled by merchant. Amazon is expensive. Their last mile delivery is expensive. Their storage fees are expensive and becomingly increasingly so. So Amazon is moving subtly, but not so subtly, from becoming growth oriented to becoming profitability oriented. And Amazon as a company in general is really quite good at turning its cost centers into profit centers. Look at AWS as an example. And so Amazon is beginning to push more of those costs down to the merchant. So this year there are new low inventory fees. Amazon wants you to not send to a single fulfillment center, but to multiple fulfillment centers, so you bear the cost of distributing throughout their geographic network. There are low inventory fees. There are long-term storage fees that are quite punitive that have been introduced this year. And so Amazon is really quite white glove, and it is expensive. And at some point, the economics of shipping a product that may not sell through very quickly, may be large and bulky, really favor it towards an FBM, a fulfilled by merchant system. And so fundamentally, the trade-off is, do you want to fulfill yourself using your own 3PL that may not have the reach or the speed, and may even in some cases be more expensive, and lose out on the favorable treatment by the algorithmic gods of Amazon? Or conversely, does your product have economics that can sustain rapid turnover, enough of a predictable inventory system where the FBA fees are kind of worth it? And so I'll give an example. And Martin, I'd love to have your perspective on it with large baby items as opposed to the small nail file. So this falls into the small and light category of Amazon and costs $99 in the US. We sell through them very quickly, and we have a fairly predictable level of demand. And so we pay very few low inventory fees, we pay very few long-term storage fees, and we're in the lowest cost category, or among the lowest cost categories, for last mile fulfillment. This is a slam dunk for FBA. For some of Martin's products, I'm not sure, but maybe you have some perspective on FBM that I may not have direct firsthand experience with.
Yeah, so happy to chime in here. I think from a cost perspective, FBA and FBM for larger ticket items are actually quite similar. If you can find a reliable 3PL partner other than Amazon who can provide you with good deals with UPS, FedEx, and other shipping partners. So for example, one of our products is a large bassinet items, and it's the box is a meter long, right? So initially, when we're just kind of doing the traditional shipping approach through UPS and FedEx, it costs around $40 to send that one box. Later on, we found a 3PL who have an agreement in place with UPS and with FedEx, and we're able to bring that cost down to around $20 or so. The cost of FBA was around $22 to $25, so it's actually quite similar from that perspective. We started out with FBM, but actually later on switched to FBA because of one reason only, and that's returns. So when Amazon products come back to the Amazon warehouse, they already have a process in place in terms of how they inspect the items to make sure that the boxes are not broken on the outside, and just aesthetically the products are nice, right? And that they can start selling it again. But if you were to choose a 3PL partner, as an entrepreneur, you do have to spend time on figuring out how that process is going to work, designing out a checklist for your 3PL partners to follow. And I would say that sometimes it can be hard to track and monitor whether they follow that process or not. So for that reason, we decided to go with FBA just because they already have that process in place.
That was really helpful information. So thank you both. I want to ask, when it comes down to different e-commerce platforms, you mentioned WooCommerce, you mentioned Shopify. Can you talk maybe a little bit about different pros and cons of, say, Wix, Shopify, WooCommerce, and any others that you think should be on the consideration list?
For sure. So I think there's kind of two buckets of website builders. So there's one bucket that's focused on e-commerce, such as Shopify, WooCommerce, or any other platforms that's really specifically geared towards e-commerce. The second bucket is platforms like Wix or GoDaddy or Square that's more focused on enabling that website experience, right? It's not specifically geared towards e-commerce. You can build a blog or other forms of content website on it. So being a specialist in e-commerce has its advantages. For starters, I would say that the credit card transaction fee is a big deal. So for Wix, for example, no matter how big you get, no matter how much volume you handle on the website, they charge a flat 2.9% credit card transaction fee on your order. For Shopify, it starts at 2.9% and it goes all the way down to 2.4. And if you're a larger merchant, you can do a custom negotiation with them as well to bring that credit card cost down to around 2% or so. So as you scale, that 1% difference is going to make a huge difference in how much profit you get at the end of the day. So from a scalability perspective, it makes sense. The other difference to highlight, I would say, is just in terms of what kind of integrations, going back to that point, that they offer out of the box. So a lot of the 3PLs would already offer integrations with Shopify and WooCommerce, versus for Wix, they don't really have that integration in place. And sometimes you might need to hire a tech agency to help you build out that custom integration, which can be fairly expensive. The connector can cost anywhere between, I would say, $30,000 to $50,000, which is definitely a big cost that can be avoided if you select the right platform in the first place. Just within the first bucket, though, within the e-commerce bucket, I think the platforms are quite similar. At the end of the day, it kind of comes down to what your own preferences are. So they have different interfaces in the back end where you can find your analytics. They have different customization tools where you can build out the website, but through different methods. So it's really kind of up to you to try out different things and select what works best for you. There's, again, not one size fits all, but you really got to kind of try out different things and see which ones really fits your preferences as a founder, as a manager of your own brand.
Well, I'm going to go over to you in a sec, Shai. I'm just going to provide some of my experiences from Wix. Great, wonderful front-end experience. And from a branding standpoint, my background's very much branding. It was an incredible system to being able to customize moderate, and we were able to do very specific custom coding that would allow our expert side of the Equo site to come about, or to create a directory that was quite powerful. What we found, though, when we started out with Kbanish, the backend, we didn't have integrations, simple integrations, even into Canada Post. So we had to go through McCool, and it just really complicated that side of things. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to switch over into Shopify, because we were losing a bit of the front end, but we were getting a more functional system that was going to exponentially improve our operations. Shai, what have your experiences and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Amazon is largely self-contained. You log into Seller Central and all the tools are essentially available for you. Now, the learning curve is fairly steep, and so that's why Amazon has this thing called Seller University, with a collection of tips and tricks and how-tos, etc. The learning curve is quite steep, though, in the sense that there's a lot of functionality. Inventory management, listings management, pricing, data analytics, campaign management for your online advertising, et cetera, et cetera. And so the table stakes of being able to run an Amazon store is being able to master Seller University. How to deal with seller support, which is can be quite a frustrating process. Oftentimes, you don't know whether you're dealing with a human or not, and it feels quite bureaucratic in terms of the functionary list. But how do you explain things to Amazon in a way that Amazon understands that allows you to unlock those things? And so that's difficult. If we're talking about broader software applications, I mean, there's a lot of YouTube videos that show how you want to do some of the fundamental aspects on Amazon. So if Seller University is insufficient, there's a lot of knowledge out there. We discourage people from necessarily buying into the entire launch an Amazon business, become a millionaire in 2 weeks kind of a situation. There is no magic bullet here. It's like channel like any other that requires time, sweat, blood, tears, treasure, and all of those things in order to get right. And so our suggestion is to focus on the functionality. In terms of various software products, so market analytics and understanding of competitor space is really important. So we use tools like VireLaunch and Helium 10 in order to assess a market size, really kind of aggregate competitive offerings in certain keywords. As a matter of fact, when we first assess client viability, we take a scan of the market. We see who's playing, we see the revenue concentration, we see the market size, we see the average prevailing price. And all of those are done with Helium 10 and VireLaunch and some of our own knowledge and expertise in order to assess the viability of what it is that we're trying to launch. So there's marketplace tools. There's also additional tools, SoStock, for example, or other things that are used for inventory management. There's actually an entity that has an entire business model based on aggregating Amazon tools. A company is called Carbon 6 out of Toronto. And we're very happy to be partners with them, and we know those guys well and have all the time in the world for those. And what they do is they buy up Amazon tools, so things like seller investigators. So for Amazon, Amazon sometimes holds back some of the money that they pay to you for whatever reason, and this tool helps you unlock some of those things. I'll kind of left the big thing for last, which is pulling data off Amazon can often be in a way that is useful, can be a bit of a frustrating thing. And there are some tools that are used like A2X and others where you can pull your sales data, your units data, your refunds data, etc. Because Amazon constantly changes its APIs and restricts permissions and how their information is categorized, not necessarily maliciously, because these were internal tools that were then made available externally, getting good sales and cost data in a way that is consistently organized is challenging. And so this is going to be horrifying for people to hear, but we actually ended up building an ERP in Excel that is the amalgam of something like 12 different models that has logistics costs and production costs and the various Amazon costs, with a layer of organizing the Amazon data underneath, because we found that the off-the-shelf tools were not necessarily sufficient. Now, it allows us to make some pretty incredible decisions. We know by country, by SKU, by month, by currency, exactly not only the revenue and returns of every single product, but also its entire Amazon cost stack. And we can get to a contribution margin inclusive of Amazon for all our SKUs, which allows us to double down on our winners, cut our losers, and really make better pricing decisions. But that's an internal investment that we've made, and we have not fully seen a product in the market that does what we need as a power user. But ultimately, if I were to kind of summarize, it is you want the market intelligence tools, you want to have an ability to pull out sales data from Amazon. There's a bunch of other auxiliary tools, but there's no avoiding becoming an expert in Seller University. In Seller Central, and you do that through Seller University.
That's really interesting. I want to kind of switch now to your point in terms of selling and being able to push people, promote people from that marketing standpoint. It's great to have these channels, but if people aren't getting pushed to them, Martin, we'll start with you and then go over to Shai. What are some strategies? What are some media or tactics that you think need to be considered in order to really promote your store and your brand?
I think when brands are just starting out, the most cost-effective strategy is really to leverage social media and content marketing. I remember that when we're just starting out, we had a lot of success in terms of finding influencers, smaller size influencers, specifically in the baby care space. These are typically, influencers with anywhere between 10,000 to 100,000 followers. Sometimes they're willing to do a promotion for your product free of charge if they receive a free product from you for them to try out. And the main advantage of that is that they're really channel agnostic. So, you can drive traffic either to your Amazon store or Shopify store. And not to mention that their audience is also very targeted in your space, right? So the conversion rate is really high because they already have a community that kind of trusts their opinion and are in it for the same reasons of why you have your company built. So yeah, I would say in the early days, that's definitely the best strategy to explore. Other strategies for merchants as they grow include paid ads on Google and YouTube and other channels, as well as SEO, so search engine optimization. So my experience is that these two channels are mostly long-term plays, as in you might post an ad, you might realize that the cost of acquisition is not like very, very high, and you might not see that immediate return come in. But it's really about for SEO, for example, it's about optimizing your site so that later on down the road, one specific SEO optimization can result in 100 more customers that come in over a let's say 12-month or a 24-month period. So it's more of that long-term play with less noticeable short-term gain.
I know on a paid, earned, owned stand front, I absolutely agree with you. I think the earned and owned is, a lot of attention, time, and money should get put into that, developing the right content. On the paid side, one of the things that I found to be beneficial is certainly remarketing and retargeting ads, because at least now when you've got to them, you're creating with remarketing. For those that aren't aware, somebody's hit your site and you're going to keep serving them up. So while they're in that frame of mind, retargeting is finding like-minded people who are more likely to hit your product. And I think that the days, I remember when the internet first started and digital ads were scoring big in terms of click-throughs are long gone. But a strong integrated PEO strategy, I think, absolutely has to be considered. Shai, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a complex question on Amazon because again, it's its own unique beast, but it kind of has to play into a broader channel strategy. So the reality of the matter is that when you're first starting out on Amazon, you will have to spend quite a bit on advertising, and it's done so by design because this is a near 100% margin business for Amazon. You're effectively paying to they're putting their sellers against each other to compete for the top spot. So something like 80% of sales or so happen on the first page of Amazon. As Amazon shoppers, we know that that's true, because by the time we click next, the products that are compatible are probably not as compatible, and we've already made our purchase decision and have moved on. And so getting ranked to go to that first page is a difficult thing. It's both a science and an art, but the input to that is not only expertise, it's money. And so if you're looking at listing a product, and let's say we're, Cavendish for me, an example, Folgers, Nescafe, all those guys have spent vast sums of capital in order to rank first for all the primary keywords. And so the question is, how do you start with more tangential keywords, with longer tail keywords, to slowly begin grinding your way up from page 10 to page 4 to page 2 and onwards? What is your geography? What are the specific things that your customers are looking for that they may not be looking out of a Nescafe type situation? And so with those search terms have become very important, and you begin ranking on those search terms depending on how much and how capably you spend. And so it's quite a daunting stat to say that for you to take a product and its various variations and to push it to the front page, depending the competitive intensity, is a 6 to 12 month process that will require an aggregate between 50 and 100K of marketing spend, which is a very daunting thing. There's going to be revenue against that spend, and you're not going to be spending that frivolously, because you're going to be looking very carefully at ROAS, which is return on ad spend, and TACOs, which is total advertising cost of sales, inverses of each other. And so the saving grace there is that you start making small bets and having small wins, and then medium bets and medium wins, and then large bets and large wins. And so there's a natural physics to these things where you can't just spend 50 grand in the first month and rank yourself to the first page. And so there's an adaptability to that process. So that's kind of the overall philosophy of spending on Amazon. There's a lot of nuance there, but in terms of the tools, there's sponsored products and sponsored brands, and there's like, can you list your can you list your listing on your competitor's listing based on the keywords that they use, and your ability to use things like posts. But I'll provide one interesting insight, which is off Amazon. And when you're first setting up an Amazon store, we recommend diverting some of your direct-to-consumer and email traffic to Amazon. Yes, it is cannibalistic. And in those early days, it is essential in creating that positive momentum so that you have more organic and less paid. If your email shoppers or if your email list customers can buy from your Amazon store than from your direct-to-consumer store, even temporarily, then that really helps boost up the organic rank. And Amazon heavily rewards traffic that comes from outside of its platform, because it just seeks to capitalize the size of the pie, not just necessarily its share of it. And so there's a lot of nuance to these things, but ultimately I'll come back to that. It's skill and resource and time that will ultimately get you there. Now, once you're there, you send inventory to Amazon and then send you fat checks every 2 weeks, but it takes an investment to get there, just like any other channel.
Yeah, that was a great tip too, by the way. I want to start to kind of wrap up and ask a question. What innovative technologies are you seeing that are right now reshaping e-commerce? Martin, maybe why don't you start off?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a lot of innovation going on. So in the AI space, for example, it's something that's really creating a lot of waves in the e-commerce space. So how merchants typically use AI today include an AI learning tool where it can learn the patterns of purchasing behaviors on your website, so that it automatically suggests products that are more likely to drive conversion. So from that conversion optimization perspective, AI is helping. Another tool that a lot of merchants use is chatbots, AI-enabled chatbots that can really save a lot of costs in terms of not having as many customer support, but still be able to provide the same level of experience, good customer service to your clients. So something else that we noticed is right now there's a lot of gamification that's also enabled within the e-commerce site itself. So one of the clients that we work with is actually Drake the artist, and we maintain this website for them, which is actually modeled after the artist's mansion. So you can walk through the mansion, you can go into the different rooms while shopping at the same time. For example, a T-shirt that's hung up in the closet, or a pair of shoes that's lying out in the front yard. So, having that gamification experience can improve the engagement of customers on your website, and therefore driving conversion as well, so that your customers can kind of understand, how do I use this product through that gamification experience. The last thing that we'll mention is AR and VR, and this is, I think we're very close to the stage where with a click of a button, you can enable this feature on your website. I think we're very close to that, like progression. I think that in the CPG space specifically, we see this used a lot with merchants in the fashion industry or cosmetics industry, so that you can virtually try on certain products. In the larger item industry, for example, you can see the furniture in your house. You can design out an interior design without actually getting the product. So it's just a lot of like innovations happening that enables customers to make a more informed decision.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I wasn't aware that we're that close on the augmented reality and virtual reality stand front. That'll be very exciting. Shai, what are you seeing?
I'll maybe just add a couple of layers because I think Martin provided a great and comprehensive answer. Two things. Generative AI is quite good. We don't necessarily recommend using it for keyword optimization just yet. There's a lot of art and nuance to it, and so it will require some level of human intervention. And so you can get something using AI or using automated systems that is probably 60-70% there, but for true competitiveness, you're really gonna have to still put the human touch on it. One thing that I will say that is a key thing to succeeding in Amazon is that's good quality creative. And why? Because we all know what a good Amazon listing should look like. The first picture is the product on a white background, and the second one is a lifestyle, and the third one is an infographic, and the fourth one is the product stage, right? Like we kind of know what it's meant to look like. And so once you spend all the time, effort, and energy to drive customers to your listing, you want them to convert, and good creative is a way of converting that. And so here, tools like Canva can allow almost anyone really to be a designer, and allows people to level up their graphics development quite quickly. And I think images and video competency is something that's being democratized quite quickly. And really being able to have those beautiful images on your listing, whether they be on Amazon or on your other platforms, is key into providing the customer experience. And something that needs to be said is that if you don't use these technologies, your competitor probably is. So you should at least be aware and starting to develop some proficiency, even if it's not part of your regular workflow.
That's great. And for closing, I'd like to give each of you a moment to shout out to each of your companies. If you can give a nice little advert, especially for our community members, on what each of your company does. Martin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sounds good. So what Title Commerce does really well is digital transformation for all the way from smaller merchants to larger enterprise clients. So what we do is that we provide that strategic thinking in terms of helping clients think about how to grow their businesses, and what are the most effective steps to take with limited resources, helping to take into account a prioritization in order to maximize the results. So we have that combination of strategic insight with the implementation capabilities to take really e-commerce stores to the next level. Just being that kind of trusted advisor and working with our clients to optimize that business model and bring about the changes to their stores to drive conversion.
And what size of companies and what stage would be a perfect fit so that they can not only afford your services, but absolutely benefit from your services?
We work with merchants of all scale. So we have some enterprise clients that are Fortune 500 companies, but we also work with very early stage startups that are doing, for example, $10,000 in revenue. Just really, helping them brainstorm like how do they create their business model and what do they optimize from a product perspective. So we're very open and we're quite flexible in our engagement model, and we do serve clients of all sizes.
That's awesome. Thanks. Shai.
Sure. So, as I mentioned a few times here, we're an Amazon channel builder. Well, we're a marketplace channel builder with a focus on Amazon because it is the biggest and the most established. And really, the model that we take is a partnership model with our brand. We treat these Amazon stores that we built as joint ventures. The company, the brand, provides the product, the expertise, and the understanding of the core product market fit. And we really develop the channel because we do two things really well. I'm obviously biased, but I think we do them really well. The first is Amazon store operations, which is creating the stores, managing the listings, selecting the keyword, picking the images, and kind of dealing with Amazon on a day-to-day basis to make sure that the pricing, the inventory, and the compliance aspects are there. And second is we do the performance marketing. And one of our co-founders is a former derivative hedge fund trader with this beautiful mathematical mind who comes up with a lot of our algorithms that make our marketing on Amazon both efficacious and efficient. Because we know that it's your money and we don't want to spend it willy-nilly on advertising. And so really we're looking for brands that are either rapidly growing or established. Product market fit is important, and as I mentioned before, you don't want Amazon to necessarily be your first channel these days. And so and really ultimately we look for passionate entrepreneurs and people who love their products, people who are very passionate and good to work with, and really because we treat these things as partnerships, we want to work with good people to get good product out and to make customers happy.
That's great. I want to thank both of you for your time today, for your expertise. We will be sharing the video as well as cutting this up for content, and this is really going to help benefit, I think, a lot of founders today. So thank you very much and have a fantastic week ahead.